you need to see yourself as the guy. You need to see yourself as the man. And I don't mean that in like an arrogant sense. I mean that from the perspective of a hero, like someone who is a main character of your story. And I understand how that can come off. A lot of people, I think, are probably already too self-absorbed and narcissistic. That's not what I mean. That can definitely be a trap. But what I mean is within context of a general lack of confidence that people have and that I see a lot. And what they could use, to be honest, is a lot more main character syndrome. They don't see themselves as the man. They don't see themselves as the guy. They don't see themselves as the hero. And they only see themselves as like a failure, a bystander, a vulnerable participant in the brutal game of life. Like that's kind of how they see it. They feel like they're living a very out of control existence in many, many ways. Like they don't really have much control. Why I'm saying this is because this is relatable to fitness, but I'm going to use an example here of conversation I was having with someone literally like 15 minutes ago. And he follows a lot of my stuff, supports a lot of like the content I put out, and it seems to resonate well with him. But he mentioned to me, because I've gone through addiction in the past, he used to do a lot of cocaine, a lot of booze, a lot of other drugs, smoked a ton of weed, a lot of weed. And that was years that went by, and, different phases, different seasons, but I'm very different now. And he was asking me like my take on how I kind of got through that. And it's a very hard question, but it's a very good question. And so I was trying to give him the best answer that I could. And one thing that jumped out in his message to me that I pointed at is he said, I've tried to quit weed many, many times, but every time I do it, what'd he say? He said, I'm trying to quit weed, but every time I do it, I fail or something like that. So I'm like, okay, that makes sense. We've all kind of experienced what the emotions around that feels like. It's not a fun place to be. Discouragement, disappointment, frustration, anger, hopelessness, all that stuff. But then he said, I'm just weak-minded. I'm too weak-minded. I think that's what he said. Forget the exact words, but it was that essentially. And so I told him, I said, we're not going to argue about whether that is actually true or not, because that actually doesn't matter. What matters more is that you believe that and that you're saying that. And so we need to change what you're saying, and we need to change what you believe. And I'm not saying this is easy, but you do need to do this. And so that's what I told him. I said, instead of saying I try and do this and then I can't because I'm, negative characteristic, in this case, weak-minded, change that to being like, I have acted like a weak person for a lot of my life, but that is not who I really am. You need to align yourself with like a different identity. That's what we want to do here. The exercise should essentially force your perspective so that you see yourself as someone greater than you are in this current state, which makes sense when you think about it. If you're trying to transform yourself and change into someone else, someone that you're not right now, then you need to be able to see that person as your true self. Otherwise, you'll never actually get there. Most people identify with their current self now, and their perception and their identity of their current self now is typically very negative. Because obviously, if you're trying to change, there's probably some negative or less ideal or less favorable aspects of your current self. That's why you're trying to change, right? So the thing is, you need to be able to see, this is the key. You need to see yourself, and this is what I told him. You need to see yourself, your current identity, as a stepping stone to your next identity. You need to see this as not the destination. I think too many people see it as like, this is who I am. This is where this is who I'll be forever. This is the way things are. I've just always been like this. I'm this person. I'm that guy. I'm this way. I'm weak-minded, whatever. And it's like, dude, you're literally, what you're doing there is you're casting a spell on yourself that is very hard to be broken. You're creating roots of this identity and this belief system that literally keeps you weak-minded. Like it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so that's why it's so important that to create an alignment with this new identity, this new direction, new place you want to go. And you don't need to lie to yourself of your current situation, where you're at right now. It's okay to be like honest about it and be like, yeah, I'm not happy with who I am right now. But you cannot see your current self, where you're at right now, as the end place, the destination, or even look at it from like a place of self-hatred. That's a whole other angle too. I think a lot of people are motivated by self-hatred, which is kind of a shitty fuel. That's a bad juju. That's not a good, that's not a good fuel source in my opinion, because if that's going to be your fuel source, then you're going to require it all the time. And I don't know about you, but I don't really want to hate myself. I like myself. And I'd rather be motivated and driven by a fuel source that kind of comes from a place of self-love, self-acceptance, self-compassion, and, general optimism and positivity, to be honest. I realize a lot of that's like kind of woo-woo, but it's true. There's a different energy associated with those two different ends of the spectrum. And I think a lot of people have that. They come from this place of like self-hatred and like, I hate myself. I don't like myself. And I want to change. And it's like, that's why they want to change. When really it should be more like, I'm trying to use even myself right now as an example. Cause like I'm always trying to improve, but I'm also aware that I'm also like, if I don't change tomorrow, that's okay. Cause I love who I am right now. And I have lots of flaws. I have lots of things that I don't actually like about myself, but I don't hate myself for it. I don't beat myself up for it. I don't think I'm a bad person. There's just aspects that I'm like, that could improve. That could get better. I would love to see that upgrade. And I have a plan to do that, X, Y, and Z or whatever. But I think a lot of people are like, this needs to change. I hate this about myself. This sucks. It's like very negative, as opposed to, this is, again, using myself as an example, I'm looking like where I'm at right now. My current self is a stepping stone to the next version of me. And then the same thing will happen once I'm there. Once I'm there and I'm at the next version of me, and that's my current self, then I'm looking at it again as like, this current self is a stepping stone to my next self. And it's not that it's like the keeping up with the Joneses of personal development, that people get stuck in this loop of like, my next self will be the version of me that I finally love, or I'm finally happy once I'm the person I dreamed I could always be. And I realize like a lot of people probably sell that, even in my world around fitness. Even I might be implicitly selling that if I'm being completely transparent. That's not what I'm trying to do. But I do think a lot of people are unhappy with themselves, and that's okay too. But I think you got to examine like, why do you want to change? What do you want to change? And what are your expectations with changing? So I guess I'm kind of going off on a tangent here. This was all coming back to like what this guy was saying, where he was identifying with being weak-minded. And I said, essentially coming back to that, like that has to change. You cannot latch yourself onto like, I am a weak-minded person, because you will now act that out in every aspect of your life. And I already know that him just saying that, he will literally fail at everything moving forward in regards to any attempt to quit marijuana and probably a bunch of other things in life as well, because it bleeds over into everything. So to be able to, aside from tactics and strategies and perspectives and advice, which I'm giving some of that here, the root thing you got to start with. The root thing is like your belief system, your identity, and your language. Like all three of those, like identity, language, and beliefs, and they all kind of work together, and they're all reflection of each other because they work kind of symbiotically. So I said one of the ways to start with that is by just literally changing the words you describe yourself as. Like, you are not a weak-minded person. You may be behaving in that way, but that's not who you truly are, and you know it. And you need to change your perception of yourself. You need to see yourself as a killer. You need to see yourself as a gangster. You need to see yourself as someone who is basically someone who aligns with all of the characteristics and behaviors that you want, right? Your ideal version of yourself. Too many people have like this ideal version of themselves, and they're like, oh, that's not really me though. It's like, well, you need to see that. You need to divorce that, and you need to and then you need to connect them. You need to divorce the idea that isn't you, and you need to connect the idea that is you, and that has been you all along. And now what you're doing is you're just bridging that gap from your current self to your ideal self. And then it's much smoother to get to your ideal self because you're like, oh, that's who I was all along. Where I'm at now is just a necessary stepping stone to get there. And again, coming back to myself as an example, that's how I see my entire process of personal development in life. Like, I love where I'm at right now. I love the person I've become, but I'm still trying to change aspects about myself and my life and my behavior, my beliefs, and I'm not in a rush. I'm patient, but there's probably a healthy level of urgency as well that I'm kind of imparting on myself. And I'm looking at this as like where I'm at right now. There's no rush in a sense because I see this as a necessary stepping stone to get to my next self. And this is the journey of life. This is my journey that I must take. There's no rush to be like, I got to change. I hate myself. I'll be happy once I'm there. It's like whatever there is. It's like, no, I'm happy here and I'll be happy there too. It's just going to be different and happy, you know? So it's really the larger description of, embracing the process. Like that's really what it is. And once you embrace the process, this is applicable to literally everything else in life too, is, you embrace the process. It's a superpower to get anything done. So yeah, anyways, that's my Sunday schizo ramblings. I'm going to do a physique update as well. I'll probably drop that tomorrow or Tuesday because I got a couple weeks left of the diet and I'm looking shreddy. Red light. But if you have any questions, or if any of that resonated with you, I'd be curious to know. Or if you're like, dude, that went over my head. None of that made any sense. Shut up. Also, let me know as well. Comment below. I answer all the comments. If you have any questions about fitness or anything at all, I answer all my DMs. I'm happy to help anybody for free. No strings attached, no gatekeeping at all. So just DM me on Instagram if you do need some help with something. At I am Tim Walcott. Happy Sunday. God bless.